Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field of 68. This one is I don't know if you would call it bittersweet because I'm not upset about the result, but um this is a podcast that we're going to be reviewing the final four. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably know the result. If you don't, just look on ESPN. Alabama, lost to UConn 86-72 in a game that Alabama, you know, for 35 minutes played with the best team in the country. So we're going to be reviewing that, talking about the offseason, maybe potential, not necessarily targets by name, but maybe position targets that Alabama is looking for. Obviously, they have to fill a assistant coach spot with Austin Clonch going to UTSA. So we're going to review that. And then, just maybe talk a little bit about what we're planning on doing in the off season for you guys. So glad you guys could join us. I'm Christian Sykes. I'm joined by Joey Blackwell and Charles Branch, as always. How are you guys doing today?
I agree with your assessment. We as far as the game, wish we were talking about a win, but at the same time, you at this, just really, it's like what we said last week. Regardless of the result, it was just a thrill to be in a Final Four, and I think we all can agree that we all know that this isn't going to be the last one. I think there's still a bright future for this program, and it was just an honor to go there and watch it and just be witness a part of Crimson Tide history. And it's I know we're about to break it down and get into it, and just really feeling really positive right now.
Yeah, I can't. I do have some disappointment, and it's not really directed at the team at all. It's just you like to. I want to win, and like you said, we'll break down the game here in a little bit. But no, as we know, nobody gave us a chance. I did think we played very well. I'm not upset with the team. It's just when you have those opportunities, you obviously want to win. And Connecticut's a great team. Like I said last week, they deserve every accolade, and we got to see that on display. But I guess to start off, yeah, it's been a phenomenal year. A lot of credit, obviously, to Coach Oats, the staff, the players, because it has been a roller coaster of a year, and those guys stuck together. I think that's why I had so much confidence coming into the game that it could be something pulled off. Is because the guys just played so well together and enjoyed playing well, enjoyed playing with each other. But a valiant effort Saturday night, a fun game, a lot of fun moments. Eventually, look, we've had some great moments like Petway hitting the layup against Florida, Relaford's buzzer beater, Herb Jones hitting the free throws, where we beat LSU. But we're eventually going to have some great moments that lead to more wins. I would have loved to have been sitting here talking about Grant Nelson's dunk over Klingon in a win, because that was just fantastic, and I can't wait to watch that in one shining moment tonight. But again, just an awesome experience to watch the team in the Final Four, and very excited about what we have ahead in the future.
Yeah, that Grant Nelson dunk was crazy. Especially, it just felt so like in that moment. I think I talked to you about this morning, Charles, that in that moment it felt like Alabama was going to win the game because, like, I don't know, it felt like a culmination of all of the talk of Alabama can't guard, UConn. Alabama can't get in the paint to Klingon. Like Klingon's just this big dominant force, and he was. I am not saying Klingon is not a dominant force because that man's absurd, but in that moment when you see Grant Nelson come down the court and it wasn't like Klingon jumped, but like jumped out of the way and don't like Klingon went for it and Grant just hammers it down. Like it just was like this is the proof that Alabama can do this. Obviously it didn't happen, but like I was
Well,
just like,
they
that's it.
well, they had been waiting for that moment for those first 7 minutes of the half. They had been waiting to string points together. And yeah, right before that was the three by Sears. And so then you have that dunk Then you have another Nelson goes back down, gets another jumper on the next. They get the ball on the opposite end. Then you had the free throw from Spencer, and then you had another jumper by Grant. So he had 6 points in a row right there. And that second jumper is what tied the game at 56 all right there. And so at that timeout, it was really starting to be like, okay, all right, here we go. This is where Bama, this is the moment they've been waiting for to start pulling away. Then, of course, credit to UConn coming out and just scoring 8 unanswered. And that was really the beginning of the end right there. Had Bama been able to capitalize on that energy, we could be talking about a very different basketball game. But credit to UConn and how they were able to really just take that and mold it into what they needed it to be. Because pretty much they put their foot on the gas pedal for the rest of the game after that point. And that's when they created separation. But overall, still, yeah, that moment will be on one shining moment tonight. That's for sure.
I was very confused. And Joey, since you were there, you might be able to explain it a little bit more. Nelson makes the dunk, and there's immediate whistle from the referees. I mean, watching it at home, as Christian said, Klingon went for it. There was clear contact, and no foul was called. And I don't want to start anything as like, man, we got screwed by the officials or anything, but like that play, like you're talking about, then you get to add an extra point onto that moment. Or when everybody's kind of settling down, Alabama's still got an opportunity to put another point on the scoreboard instead of it just going back to Connecticut. I was very confused in that moment of what the stoppage was and why a foul was not called.
I was very confused by that too, because I heard the whistle, even though I was up, with Coach Bryant, way up in the top of the stadium. I heard that whistle too. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded. There were some UConn fans in front of us, but then everybody else around us were Alabama fans. And we all went nuts because we thought it was an and one. And if you listen to the broadcast with Chris Stewart, even he thought it was an and one, that dunk. I was a little bit too far away to know what happened. I just know that before you knew it, they were inbounding the basketball to go the other way, and all of us were very confused. So I don't really have an answer to that, but everybody in the stadium was just as confused as people on the broadcast. I'm sure there might have been a reason. Maybe they thought when Grant went down, maybe they thought he was injured or something. I don't know, and they just blew a preliminary whistle because he did go down pretty hard on that. So they didn't want UConn to inbound it too quickly. But I'm not going to sit here complaining about the officiating because I think overall the officiating was pretty fair. I mean, people forget that Bama was in the bonus like way before UConn was in that second half. So I think the officiating, they did miss some things, but overall, I mean, it's not like it was a couple of weeks ago where we're playing Grand Canyon and wondering, okay, did the refs just swallow their whistles on one end of the floor? But
no, I think I just look at it. I mean, the margin of error for us was going to be small in this game. And so I look at a play like that where Grant goes to the free throw line, you got an 80+% chance he's converting that, and we get an extra point out of that. And another play that I think of was 35-33, and they miss a shot. Pringle's about to rebound it, and I think it was Stephon Castle knocked it out of his hands, and it goes out of bounds. And they give the ball.
And they call it the other way.
So they inbounded on the baseline. I think it was Cam Spencer comes off of a screen from Klingon. Ryland gets cleared out, and he hits a three and makes it 38-33. Those obviously you have an opportunity there to get another stop. So you have to give credit to Connecticut for capitalizing on that opportunity. But those are like those errors in a game, or those moments where that margin of error is so small that you need those calls to go your way against a team like Connecticut. So again, not complaining about officiating. It's just those are things that we needed to go our way to win that game more than likely.
Yeah, and sorry that I keep laughing. The reason I keep laughing is the first time I've actually talked to anybody that watched the game. And so me sitting in the nosebleeds, I'm thinking, oh, well, I just missed something. And apparently I didn't miss a lot from being so far up. So that's why, because I was very confused there because it looked very evident that was our basketball on that play. And I was like, well, maybe I just missed it because I'm sitting way up here, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to continue my positive spirit and not going to get bogged down by officials. But, oh, goodness gracious.
No, I mean, I definitely think that whistle was because they thought Grant was hurt. And generally with like an inbounds, he was sitting under the basket And so they didn't want Connecticut to inbound the ball while a guy is sitting under the basket, you know? Um, and so I think that's probably why, just to make sure that he had time to get up. Um, as far as like the other stuff, I mean, I think the way UConn played, a lot of people talk about free throws or free throw differential. Um, but the way that UConn played allowed them to get more free throws. They were the more physical team on the offensive end than Alabama was. Obviously, being just larger than Alabama as far as size is concerned, that's going to be a natural thing. Um, and I think Alabama was probably taking a little bit more chances defensively because they had to, as far as playing a little bit more physical, maybe reaching a little bit more, you know, when they're going up for a block, maybe not being 100% vertical, things like that, just because that's what Alabama had to do in order to try to prevent UConn's offense from being successful. But I'll say this for Alabama, I know it's not the best feeling in the world that you lose, but if Alabama was playing anyone besides UConn, they probably win the game. UConn just doesn't make mistakes. And that's a sign of a well-coached team. And Dan Hurley's a favorite to be a back-to-back national championship coach for a reason. They don't make mistakes. They don't turn over the ball. They play very sound defensively, and they don't try to take. They're a very risk-averse team, which is surprising. But I mean, when you're in a situation where you're the better team on the court, why would you try to take risks to win a game when you don't have to? So credit to UConn. They did what they were expected to do, but it really has me feeling good about, one, the system that Nate Oats is running, obviously making a Final Four that also does that. But one, the system that he's running, and then two, for him to be able to do that with and I'm not saying the talent was bad this year as far as the team's concerned, because we had amazing talents on the team, but I don't think as of right now projecting, 4-6 at 7:30 or April 6th at 7:32, or April 8th. Sorry, I can't read. April 8th at 7:32 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because I don't want someone to come back and clip this when Mark Sears inevitably goes and becomes Jalen Brunson in the NBA, right? As we're projecting right now, there's not a surefire NBA player on this year's roster. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to be confident in what we're doing. And sorry, CBS just called me. That's weird. That's getting in the podcast. So,
well, excuse me.
CVS.
Oh,
the
CVS.
pharmacy.
That's like the CVS. I was like, you got
No,
John
no.
Rothstein calling you over there.
CVS. My pharmacy called me. I was making sure everything was okay. But no, as far as I was
want to say that really quick to address the point that you just made, Christian. The thing about next year is that if you look at this game, it goes back to a point you're making about UConn. One of the keys to the game, UConn's win, was just how physical they played. They really outmatched us in the physicality department, and that was in the height department. If you want a single stat line that proves that, look at the dunks. It was 14-2 when it comes to points off of dunks. They really dominated the interior under the basket, and then also they out rebounded us due to their size. But I say all that because that shortcoming shouldn't be as big of an issue for Alabama next year with the talent that they have coming in. I know they're going to have, hopefully, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Hopefully they'll have some good returners, but we'll have some solid freshmen that won't have experience, but they do have some length to them. And then hopefully we're also going to hit the portal pretty hard too. So I think that we'll be able to, if that's our one thing that we can point to as why we lost the Final Four game, I think that's something that we can that's something you can easily adjust to in the off season, as opposed to, having a roster where nobody can hit a basket.
Yeah, if I had to give letter grades I thought we played a B to a B plus game, and I thought Connecticut played a B to a B minus game. And that's just how good Connecticut is, that they can, the 14 points definitely doesn't show how close that game was. They obviously hit some threes late to expand their lead. But there was just a couple moments that I think of in the game that, man, if we make one shot or just have a play or two go our way, it's completely different. I mean, I think about when we were up 23 to 18. They come down and they get, consecutive scores. We kick it to Estrada in the corner for a wide open three. It's a good looking shot that just doesn't go down. They get the rebound and basically have a run out to it. I think it was the only two fast break points of the entire game where they hit Klingon, and he goes and dunks it. Oates calls a quick timeout, 24-23. We come back and Pringle hits two free throws. But then on the next possession, late in the shot clock, Estrada goes and doubles Klingon, which was the game plan, but he left Castle wide open on the block, and maybe Reitzel didn't roll down, or there just was a miscommunication. But it's just moments like that where you got a 5-point lead. And we've seen it a lot, unfortunately, with this team at times where you have leads and they evaporate really quickly. I think that's just part of the style that we play and also the competition that we play as well. But that felt like a missed opportunity, especially with how we were playing and how we were hitting shots, to maybe try to hold on to a lead, play within a lead, and maybe even potentially extend a lead. And then just thinking too about when we tied it up 56-56, they go down, they get I think we fouled on an offensive rebound, so they get two free throws. Estrada again, gets a really good look from three that goes in and out. They go down, and that's when they went, an 8-0 run, made it 64-56, and it was very difficult to get back in from there. We did have it 69-61 for about 2 minutes, and our offensive possessions were a Sears 3, a Reitzel 3, and a Nelson 3. So within the system, while Nelson maybe hasn't shot the ball well from three all year, he's been a guy who's shot it pretty well recently. So you get it in hands of guys that you want shooting the ball, and none of them go down. And eventually at the 5:10 mark, Klingon makes a 2-point layup, and it's 71-61. And you kind of knew it was over from there. I do want to go back and say, like I just called out Estrada, his two missed threes, and the late double that left Castle open. We're not in that game without Aaron Estrada. We're not in the Final Four without Aaron Estrada. He's a guy I wanted to highlight because you talk about the Grant Nelson game against North Carolina, talk about the Jaron Stevenson game against Clemson. Sears did his thing, but Aaron Estrada was right there making plays in both of those games. He made plays Saturday night against Connecticut. I felt really sad for him. Just, being a 6-year senior, his eligibility's done. But the run that he had to help, get us to the Final Four. I think we like to say, writing your name in Crimson Flame. I think he did that not only by being a part of this team, but the way he played down the stretch. He was a key cog in us making the Final Four, and helping lead this team to the first ever Final Four.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Estrada. That was his first time ever getting into the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. You could tell that meant a lot to him. Also, his success rate. I mean, getting into the Final Four, the only time you get to the NCAA tournament's pretty good success rate, if you ask me. But yeah, as far as his facilitating is concerned, like, I think he stepped up more than what people thought that he was going to be coming into the season as far as a facilitator, which really allowed Mark to really pick his, where his spots where he was going to shoot and attack the rim, or, different things like that. But I'm very interested to see kind of where he goes as far as his game is concerned, because he can play in Europe easily. Like, does he want to do it? I don't know. I'm not privy to that type of information, but maybe he could get on a G League roster somewhere. I mean, he's a really good player, and I think his game, as far as his mid-range game and maybe his facilitating, really could translate up to the NBA. I'm not saying he's an NBA player, but as far as like a G League contract or things like that, I think that he could be very successful in that type of area. But super excited for him for like his next steps in life. And I think Hunter Johnson said on Twitter that he was only there for a year, but he's an Alabama legend just for the things that he accomplished and how he performed down the stretch for Alabama when they really needed him to step up, especially with Wrightsville going down. So good best of luck to him as far as next steps in his life. But Joey, you were at the game and you were at the Final Four, and not just at the Final Four because you had to go cover it, or you got free tickets or something. You were at the Final Four because the University of Alabama, and I'll say it again, just like Chris Stewart did on the call, Alabama basketball made the Final Four. So
Yeah.
let's hear, not from a game perspective, but from an environment perspective, because this is the first time that Alabama fans got to experience it, is watching their team play. So how was it? How was Arizona? Give us your details about your flights, things like that.
Well, the flights got off on a wrong note because yeah, I think I tweeted, maybe I tweeted about that, but missed the flight. If I'm trying to do cliff notes here, was able to make it out on Friday in the middle of the Purdue game. And so, yeah, but I was able to literally, fly into Phoenix and barrel towards the Airbnb because I wish I'd been able to go straight to the stadium. I wouldn't miss that much, but obviously if you have a backpack and a duffel bag, can't really walk into a stadium. So had to detour to Airbnb first, drop that off, and then get to the stadium. First and foremost, credit to the city of Phoenix. They really know how to host things. Everywhere you went, Phoenix is a massive city, and you also have, of course, Glendale and Tempe right there. Everything was covered in Final Four stuff. Everywhere you turn, there was a merch shop, or there was, people inviting, Final Four fans in, or the whole city was decked out. And so the atmosphere there was a ton of Purdue, particularly Purdue fans. I think there were probably more Purdue fans than anybody else there. UConn was second. NC State, they had actually a really, really good showing too. And also credit to NC State. They are some of the nicest fans I've ever interacted with, like even before the game in the airports. They were all very, very nice. I'm sure you'll love to hear that, Christian, being up there in North Carolina. But no, they were a great time. And so, walking up to the stadium, got dropped off in the Uber, and I've never been to Phoenix before, never been to State Farm, but everybody knows what State Farm Stadium looks like because we've all seen it on TV. It's the blob in the middle of the desert, kind of. And the whole side of it was just the Final Four graphics, like that massive stadium, the entire side of it had the graphics. And so they set the stage from the very beginning. You're walking in and there's a basketball game going on inside. As far as I know, Chase Goodbread tweeted about it, talking about the size of the crowd. It was very overwhelming when I went inside, just because, as a sports writer and as a lifelong sports fan, I'm used to seeing crowds that big, but not for a basketball game. So you're walking in and you have 4 different fan bases, and the ticketing department had done a pretty good job on the lower bowl. You kind of had it divided into forts, and you could see the colors of the 4 different fan bases, and then the upper decks were all just a hodgepodge of everybody else. But just there wasn't really a seat in the house that was open, and just it was so loud. There were a few NC State fans that went home after that first game, a few Purdue fans that left too, but overall the vast majority of them did come back and watch. Most of the Purdue fans that I talked to were really pulling for Alabama in that game. And I would always come back and say, well, I wasn't pulling for y'all in the game that just happened, but but no, Purdue fans were also really nice. They kind of own the whole Edie doesn't get called for fouls thing. They're really funny about that. But just the atmosphere in general was just a lot of fun. It's definitely the most fun I've ever had at an Alabama basketball loss. I'll say that straight up. Having gone to San Diego, and witnessing that first round loss a couple of years ago, can 100% say that this one was far better. But no, just the vibe of the whole weekend was a lot of fun. I, heading into the weekend, I was thinking, where I was trying to project where it would rank on my, top favorite sporting events I've ever been to. I think it's probably, as far as historic, I think it's first. But as far as enjoyment, man, I have such sentimentality locked in with that tournament during COVID in Indianapolis. That was
That,
just still that was something else. Like that, I don't think that can ever be topped when you have 68 fan bases all in the same city. And everybody having to social distance, but not actually social distancing, at least most of us. but we tried, but there's only so much you could do at a sporting event. Um, but anyways, no, it was something I'll never forget. And even after the game, we went out to the team hotel and got to, hang out with some Alabama players, and not only a couple of them, most of them were gone, but got to see a couple of the staffers, and a couple of media personalities were there. And the vibe was, even from Alabama fans, like even right after that game, you saw a couple of people that were upset, but the vast majority of Alabama fans there were still very happy even after that game, because it's kind of what we said last week. Most of us kind of set the expectations for that game, and we also all realized that regardless of the outcome, how important that game was to the program. And so I think with that, having those realistic expectations heading into that game, I think it stung more because we were able to hang in there for so long. And it would have stung even more if we'd only lost by like 2 or 3 points. But I think that since we'd all had those expectations, we were just kind of able to sit back and just really enjoy what was happening in front of us. And so a lot of fun after the game. And then the next day on Sunday, my flight wasn't until 10:30 p.m. So I was able to go down to the entertainment district in Glendale and watch the women's national championship game, and walk around and look at the men's merchandise, and all the stuff that they had out for that. And just the vibe from all the four fan bases were still there, and everybody was still out having a good time. And just, it was an experience I'll never forget. And hoping Bama will go to another Final Four, because I can't wait to get back to one. So, but that in a nutshell was my weekend.
yeah, and I mean, I will agree with you on the sentiment of the Indianapolis COVID NCAA tournament. Like the I don't even know how to even describe that tournament, because
You literally can't compare it to anything else that's ever happened in history, because it's so unique.
like you literally there'd be so I got there, I think Alabama played on Friday. So I got there Thursday
Mhm.
in Indianapolis, and you go out to a bar, right? And normally how it works is, like, if you go out to a bar in a tournament game, you might see another person there for like if you go out to the same bar at the same time for the next round of games.
Mhm.
But for for that game, like, we went out to like Tin Roof in Indianapolis, and the day off that we had, I think, was Saturday. Um,
Mhm.
we sat in Tin Roof for 12 hours at a bar. It was me, Luke, a bunch of other Alabama fans just sat in a bar for 12 hours. And we met fans that we met the night before, because it was a Kansas fans. I think we met some Clemson fans, different things like that, the night before at the same bar. And so we hung out with these people all weekend, and we just, like, anywhere we go, we see them, we go to the same restaurants, different things like that. And um like, we were like, oh, we want to go see, I think it was like the Houston Syracuse game. And so we went and just bought tickets and just went to the game, like another NCAA tournament game, just because it was in the area. It was unreal. But um
I think also COVID kind of contributed to that climate, in that nowadays I feel like most people that would go out to bars or restaurants, you're going to do something different every time and try a bunch of stuff. Whereas COVID, at least the way that my brain was conditioned back then, was I found my spot, and then that was
yeah,
my spot. You know what I mean? I would always return to that one spot. And so by doing that, you are kind of seeing the same people and building that camaraderie with everybody that you've seen so many times. And then it also contributed to those tickets, in that even though there were so fewer tickets because the people were socially distanced, a lot of people weren't going to travel to the games. And so it was relatively easy that, oh, that's a really big matchup that I really like. Sure, I'll drop $20 to go see it, or $40 or however much it was. Um, and just, it was pretty much an all you can eat buffet of St. Elmo's cocktail, shrimp, and basketball pretty much for 2 weeks while we were there. Wish it had gone on longer. But if Alex Reese hit that three and we had made one more free throw, which he did hit that three, but if we'd hit one more free throw, we might have been talking about an Elite Eight.
yeah. earlier, sooner.
Yep.
Yeah. This would have been our third Elite Eight this year.
But as far as offseason Alabama, and we'll kind of transition here to kind of what's next for Alabama. Obviously, they have to fill a assistant coach spot with Austin Conch leaving. Ryan Panone's been talked about with potentially like Fresno State. Obviously, they filled that position. I wouldn't be surprised, just for Alabama fans that are listening, for Panone to be mentioned for other jobs. That's not saying that he would leave, but that is saying that there is real interest from different universities for his expertise. He was a G League coach, coached overseas, obviously was an assistant for the Pelicans last season, and now is under Nate Oats, who, for all accounts, for people that have, just talking heads around college basketball, and I think we'll get into this with the Kentucky stuff, but he's the next guy. He's maybe the next Dan Hurley, as far as the guy's going to take a jump to the national championship level, consistency level. So they have to do that, as well as replace some players. Alabama's currently two spots over the limit as far as scholarships are concerned, with the 4 guys we have coming in. And I think Estrada losing eligibility, Kai Spears going off of a scholarship, most likely. So Alabama's 2 over. So with that comes, either draft declarations or, people transferring, which is expected in this day and age. But what are you guys hoping or thinking Alabama's going to do in the offseason as far as transfer portal, or, different, not necessarily targets by names, but targets as far as positions are concerned?
I think, well, first of all, who's potentially coming back, or just anybody that's coming back. Everybody that played this year, I thought, had a pretty crucial moment at some point during the season. Just had one of those games that, like, yeah, this guy can do it, and could probably do it pretty consistently going forward, even if it was a freshman like a Diabate or a Sam Walters or Stevenson. I mean, I even think about, 2 images that will remain in my mind from this year. Muhammad Wagi, the jersey halfway ripped against Purdue, and the dunk that he had against Mississippi State, where he's like parallel with the bottom of the backboard, like with a tongue out, looking at the bench or something like that. I mean, he, while he was banged up a lot during the year and didn't play a lot down the stretch, like, he had his moments. Davin Cosby, against Tennessee and against Ole Miss, it felt like every time he came into a game, he was going to knock down a 3. So whoever's coming back, I feel good that we've got players. Obviously, we'd like to have more than just 3 players coming back, but we've obviously been able to build a team with less players. So we'll see how those things kind of shake out. Obviously, rim protector big is what everybody's going to talk about. I'd even go a step further, as somebody that you just, not that you can just throw lobs to, but somebody that you could put on the block potentially and go to in the post and, get some baskets, at the rim. Because I think one of the things that we need to do in the offseason, as far as self-scouting, is figure out, when teams are running us off the 3-point line and, they do have a big that is protecting the rim, how do we keep playing within our system? Connecticut ran us off the 3-point line well towards the end of the game in the second half. We obviously had our struggles against Kentucky and Florida when they would run us off the 3-point line. So how do we make this offense even more dimensional with having somebody, whether it's like a Grant Nelson or another big out there, that you can put on the block and just let them go to work? We're going to need another ball handling guard, regardless if Sears comes back or not. I think that's going to be pretty important. And I think one of the things with that made this team so good as well is this has got to be the best team that Oats has had as far as taking care of the ball. We may end with averaging 12 turnovers a game, but that's 2 or 3 turnover a game drop than what I feel like we've typically seen in our statistics. So I think that was a big part of us being very efficient. When I think about assistant coaches, obviously if Pannone leaves, you need both an offensive guy and a defensive guy. If Pannone stays, then you need to focus more on finding a defensive guy. But I want to say this about assistant coaches. And yes, losing 3 last year and losing Claunch this year, we may have lost more assistant coaches to head coaching jobs, obviously in the Oats tenure, than we ever lost with Grant, Gottfried, and Johnson combined. I remember Dan Hipsher under Grant, I think going to Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I remember Tom Asbury for Gottfried went and got the head coaching job at, I think it was Pepperdine at one time. I'm saying all that to say it is a good thing for these guys to be in demand and to be wanted. And to add on to that, we had the opportunity to listen to Reese Davis before College Game Day where he talked about, Nate Oats. It's good to have guys that are in demand. While I want, as much continuity as we can have with assistant coaches, while I want Nate Oats to be around for a really, really long time, there is a reason why he's in demand. And that is a good thing for Alabama basketball. Like I just said, I want Nate Oats to stick around for a long time. But if that day ever does come where he goes to another program, I feel so much more confident in the athletic department because of the things that we have done as far as fans supporting this program and showing that, look, we care about basketball. We want a winning basketball program. That Greg Byrne, whoever the athletic director is going to put somebody in that position to continue to have this basketball program be successful. Now, of course, I really, like I think many others, really enjoy the style of play that we have as far as being up tempo, shooting threes, attacking the rim. Hopefully there would be a replacement similar to that. And it's not, rebuilding what's already been successful with a completely new style. But I just want to say, like, I feel so much better about Alabama basketball program as a whole if that didn't go the way that we wanted to, just because we've got the right commitments in place now. So again, I'm not saying Nate Oats is leaving. I don't believe Nate Oats is leaving, but there's some of this like anxiety that comes up with it that I just don't ever feel because I feel like at the end of the day, it's going to work out and we're still going to have a successful basketball program. The commitments have been made for this to be here for a long, long time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the more you build that brand, and I won't say the easier it gets, but the level of what you can achieve gets higher. In that, if you continue to build that brand, and Alabama does become known as not a strictly basketball school or strictly football school, but just as a good athletic school, which it already is. But if you're able to level that up, it becomes easier to get those blue chip recruits. It becomes easier to become appealing in the portal, regardless of whether obviously Nate Oats really helps and really has I'm not discounting him at all. I want him to stay for forever if he can. But what I'm saying is that even if he does leave, if he's elevated the program to a certain level, it makes everything more attainable. And that's what he's been able to do so far, and I think will continue to do. But no, I'm not going to sit here and repeat everything Charles said. I feel like he and our opinions align pretty well. I think as far as looking into the crystal ball for this team's future, I think that it goes without saying, some of the struggles that we had this year is we were kind of cold from time to time on the perimeter. We kind of saw that in the latter half of the season. And I think a lot of that had to do with length, I think, on the perimeter. We were pretty small around there. I think we can definitely improve in that, which like I said earlier, we do have some length coming in. And I think that once we hit the portal, we'll also be able to take care of that really well too. And then I think on the interior, which is where UConn ate us alive, which was really our bread and butter really during the tournament, was guard protecting the interior. But we're going to have, if Nelson comes back, but if we have a loss of, say, a Pringle, we're obviously going to have to go out there and get somebody big to cover the interior, because, as we saw throughout the year, whereas we saw with Bediako, it's always good to at least have one solid center, or at least somebody that you can always rely to be under there. Grant ended up and like developing into that role. But we all remember there was a point in the year where you kind of had to rotate him and Pringle out, and it really was just who was hot that night. There wasn't really a reliable guy under the basket. So I just think for this team, the roster this year was really good, and there's still hopefully going to be a lot of returns we can build upon. But I think what we need to do next year is we need to find players that can fit into the system and provide consistency. Because I think this team this year was really streaky. Unfortunately, we got really red hot at the right time, but we were one Grand Canyon game away from going home. And if they had reacted to that game like they would have 3 weeks earlier, this podcast would have stopped 2 weeks ago. So I think that consistency will be a big thing, but I think that the personnel that we have coming in, as far as freshmen are great. I think that they all fit into the system really well. And I think that who we have is, not who we have, but I think that who we will target in the portal. Oats has obviously been at the forefront of that since the portal became a thing, and I think that that's not going to go anytime soon. And that circles back to what Oats has been able to do as far as building that system and making kind of Alabama a place where JUCO guys and guys from other schools can come to reach that next level.
Yeah, and I want to say this about because a lot of people have asked me about NIL. A lot of people have asked me about is Mark Sears coming back? Is Grant Nelson coming back? I'm just going to tell people right now, I don't know. And like that.
Me saying Pringle was also completely hypothetical. That's not me saying anything.
That's an example.
That
it's an example. And I want people to understand that these are examples of potential scenarios. Like me posting on Twitter today, Sears, Ryland, who was it? Sears, Ryland, Reed, Grant, and then Balo from Arizona, who entered the portal today. Like, that's your starting five with Reitzel as your sixth man. Like, that's just me throwing out hypotheticals, not me saying that that's going to happen. And I want to be very clear on that because, I've seen some people like bookmark the tweets or like say, "Oh my God," and I'm a fan. I'm not paid to report on the team. None of us are paid Joey was paid at one point to report on the team.
I was paid, then I got tired of it.
Yeah. And then he joined a podcast to talk about the team. So, but none of us are, I'm not talking to Nate Oats. I'm not talking to Preston Murphy, these guys. That's not our intention. Our intention is just to provide our perspective on Alabama basketball. And I think that lineup would be fun. And I would, but
I'm fully expecting Sears, Nelson, and probably Griffin and Stevenson to go test the NBA draft waters, to go through the process, because there's no harm, no foul, basically, like there is in the NFL, where you declare and you're in. Sears he did it last year. He has another opportunity to do it where he could come back. Nelson, the same thing. If you're Ryland Griffin, you're going into your junior year, you get two opportunities to do it. And then on the third time, you're definitely in. So why not go see what you need to be work on and where you kind of stack up with draft classes and things like that. So, what you were just talking about with Christian, as far as this is what the lineup could be, and all those people that are bookmarking it, don't come back to Christian when somebody declares for the NBA draft. Like that is a good thing, that they're going to go get more work. They're going to learn what they need to work on and become better basketball players. And if they stay in the draft, hopefully it's for a good reason. That's going to continue to push Alabama forward. That's going to get more NBA players that, other basketball players around the country will see that Alabama is a place where you can improve your game to go reach your dreams of getting into the NBA. And if they're not ready yet, somebody will tell them that, and hopefully they come back and improve and get to go do that in the future. But those are four guys that I would kind of expect to see some movement, at least declaring, but does not guarantee that they are staying in the draft, or that they're just testing and potentially coming back. So,
and I think the good thing about those players too is that, and this is not besmirching a certain, him at all, but I don't think there's a Javon Quinterly situation among those four. I think with those four players, they're either going to the NBA or they're staying. There's no, oh, you know what, I'm gonna test the NBA draft, have the coaches and stuff taught me up and all that stuff, and then not like my draft grade, and then I'm off to another school. I think those four players really fit into the system well. and they really do enjoy playing for Oats and playing for this program. So I know I was talking to some Bama fans the other day about a lot of them are worried about, potentially some players, some big players transfer, and there still could be. I'm not saying they're not, but I don't think there's going to be any 11th hour happenings like that. I understand there's probably some worry just because Bama fans are still coming off of that, and it probably still burns a little bit from last year. But I don't think that's something that we really need to worry about this year.
At the end of the day, it worked out for Alabama.
It did.
If you're somebody who's thinking about transferring out because they can offer you more NIL money, you can point to that Javon Quinterly situation and say, okay, you can go play for more money in college on a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament, or you can stay here and we've got 4 straight appearances in the NCAA tournament and continue to get better and to be on a national stage. And even more so on the national stage with the conference expanding and the deal with ESPN and all that. Like you now have things that you can point to of like, okay, if that's what you want to do, like that's fine, but it didn't work out for this guy. It may serve you better to not go chase the NIL bag and be successful here and have it work out for your future.
And we've talked a lot about this season about legacy. With obviously JQ leaving, Mark Sears becoming, an All-American, all record holder for most points scored in a single season, university. I think he's like 5th or 6th on the scoring list all time or something like that. I think those guys understand better than maybe prior teams the value of legacy, especially with the stuff at like Athletes Thread, where now, and I'll say this: if you're an athlete listening to this, not just a basketball player, but in general, the general rule of thumb is you need to either exhaust your eligibility at Alabama, or you need to declare and go to the draft or graduate from Alabama to be on the Athletes Thread former player list. So like a Javon Quinterly, for example, will not be on Athletes Thread with the jerseys and the everything that we're doing for former players. Won't be on it because he left. It's unfortunate, but I think that's the right way to do it, because you want guys that are building a legacy at Alabama, and there was an opportunity for him to do that there. And I'm not faulting JQ, because we all know the NIL money that he received, which was a lot. It's like maybe not life changing, but it's significant money. And
it's more than he would have gotten if he had stayed at Alabama this past year, I believe.
Exactly.
Or at least definitely more than was forecasted. That's for sure.
And I'm not faulting the guy, because I've never been put in a situation where someone comes up to me and offers me a large sum of money and says, you have to leave what you're doing and go do this. Never been asked to do that before. So I don't know what that's like, and I'm not going to claim to know what that's like. But when you're talking about legacy, like a guy like Mark Sears, for example, and this is not me saying Mark Sears is going to go in the transfer portal, but like if he were to transfer, right? You were talking about those guys are either going to go to the NBA or come back to Alabama. I don't think they're transferring. Mark Sears understands that if he were to have transferred, not saying that he's going to, just so that we're very clear, not saying that, everything that he built this season would be thrown down the drain because of what he saw with Javon Quinterly. Rylan Griffin understands that. I think Jaron Stevenson, Grant Nelson, those guys are new this year. Maybe not that same understanding, but they get it. I feel like they get it. I feel like if there is a team or players on the team that gets it, it's these guys. I've been told that, even prior to the Final Four, when all of these guys are going in the transfer portal, there were 0 conversations on this team about increasing NIL money next season for them. Like, they're not going to the coaching staff saying, hey, I need this money. I need this, next season. What's my plan? There was 0 talk of that. The whole focus was on the NCAA tournament. And I think that's the type of mindset that's going to be valuable for this program moving forward. It's not one of, hey, I need NIL money. I need money to be successful. It's, hey, I need to improve and I need to be on a team and let the team move forward. Mark Sears said it in interviews where he doesn't care how many points he scored. He could score 5 points. He just wants to help the team win. Nick Pringle said that in interviews. He just wants to help the team win. That's the mentality and the culture that Alabama needs to have, and not this. We need to pay people $700,000, $800,000 a year to come play and do a
Sorry.
sorry, Joey texted me. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, sorry. It's something maybe for later, but not for right now. Sorry.
And I need to help the team, and instead of worrying about the money, like they're just trying to improve themselves, and by doing that they what do they say? All tides raise sails. Is that the all
high tides raise all ships?
Yes, rising tides raise all ships, and I think that's the mentality. So sorry for a rant, but
Chris, I'll use another college basketball player, non-Alabama player, but you being out of North Carolina, what is Caleb Love's legacy in college basketball, going from North Carolina to Arizona? Does he have a home?
No, I mean, North Carolina doesn't claim him. In fact, North Carolina makes fun of him for going to Arizona. Arizona people probably don't like him because of his performance in the NCAA tournament. Like, that's a good point. Like, you get into a situation with these guys that are transferring everywhere. And I know Aaron Estrada went from Oregon to Hofstra to Alabama, but I think that was a different situation of he went to Oregon, didn't really make it, went to Hofstra, performed really well, and then wanted to transfer up his senior year because he was good enough to do that, which that does happen. So, sometimes you see 3-time transfers, but then like Trey Mitchell, I think, who's transferred to 4 different schools. What's his legacy at Kentucky? Right? Like, I don't know.
I'd be curious to ask a Baylor fan. Matthew Meyer, number 24, the guy who could 3-and-D guy, wins a national championship at Baylor, sticks around another year because I remember he played in Tuscaloosa when Baylor came to town. And then I think he transferred to Illinois. Like, what is his legacy if you're a Baylor fan? Is he somebody that's welcomed back with open arms? Or is it, yeah, he was on a national championship team, but he left us to go to Illinois for more money where he really could have cemented it. It's not like Baylor's a bad basketball program. It's not like they're a team that doesn't compete still for Big 12 championships, NCAA tournament appearances, national championships. I think it's something that, that is great that all these guys can earn money. And I really mean that. Like, I'm not being facetious. It's great that these guys can make money off their name, image, and likeness now. But there's also some loyalty that only increases your value going forward than just right here, right now. And I think that's something that as you get more of these examples, you will see more guys hopefully stick it out for 3 or 4 years if they don't have the prospects of going to the NBA or anything like that, because there is more value, not just within their current, playing time, but any autograph sessions after their eligibility is exhausted. Yeah, Alabama fans are going to flock to them. I mean, how many times do you feel like Alabama fans on the football side flock to former players that are signing autographs? It's not because they transferred out to a different school. I mean, Jalen Hurts is probably the only one, but Jalen Hurts had a pretty incredible legacy at Alabama before he transferred out. And I would think we all agree he transferred out for the right reasons.
Yeah, that, and I think there's a realization for players, at least from what I've seen in the SEC, or in specifically Alabama, where I think they're starting to realize that, like, yeah, the money's there, but like the money to stay long term is probably more. And a great example of like legacy and just overall just excitement was Richard Hendricks posted a photo of like 15 different Alabama former players that went to the Final Four, right? Like, if you're one of those guys that are transferring out and people that are like, you don't get to experience that type of camaraderie and like, I don't know, passion for the program, like those guys. I mean, Herb Jones was there, Richard Hendricks was there. I think who else was there? Like I think Kenny Askins there. I can't remember.
So I know John Dill, Kyle Sellers, which were two walk-ons. Coach Godfrey was there. Relaford was there.
Pat.
I think Jason Reese was there. Chuck Davis, I'm pretty sure, was also in that picture too. I mean, it's a lot of guys that, past 20, 25 years, it's a lot of guys that I grew up with, and I feel like we all kind of grew up with that, we recognize as Alabama basketball players and the legacy that they had. And it's because they were at Alabama for several years, not just one-hit wonders or anything like that.
Yeah. Sorry to get on a tangent about legacy, but I think it's important to, and again, I don't know if players listen to this, but if they do, or, you have a connection to players or something, like just let them know that their legacy is bigger than a dollar amount.
We want you back.
Yeah.
We want you back.
Yeah. And for the guys that are going to leave, like my expectation personally, this is just my opinion, not sourced by anything. Again, I am just stating in my own opinion. My expectation is for Mark and Grant not to be back next season. Just because I don't think there's much more that Mark Sear specifically can prove by coming back another year. Maybe his defense gets a little bit better, but in the tournament, his defense was fine, right? It was good. It was good enough, I think, at an NBA level to succeed, but there's nothing else for him to prove coming back to Alabama. And he's still going to be a legend, whether or not he comes back at Alabama. Grant Nelson, could he probably come back another year? Yeah, he probably would. He probably would improve as far as skills concerned, put on a little bit more weight, but shelf life in the NBA, shelf life to succeed or have your opportunity or your shot in the NBA is limited. You saw that with Javon Quinterly in 2020, 2021. He probably should have gone to the NBA and gone to the G League, and that was his shot, and he didn't take it. Obviously, we were happy he came back the next year, and then he tears his ACL, and then transfers. And now you look at Javon Quinterly, and I'm sorry that we're harping on him. He's just an example, right? What's his NBA prospects look like? They're limited at this point. So for Grant, I think it would be good for him probably to go. I'd be more than happy for him to come back. I'll openly say that he can come back and I want him back. But I think if you have a shot to go to the NBA, then you go to the NBA. That's just my two cents on it.
If he comes back, we will find somebody to make the Alabama white barbecue sauce and put Grant Nelson's face on it.
I'll do it. I'll get Athletes Thread or J&J to do it. I will. I'll tell them, hey, this is going on the NIL, and you're going to make money off this. So
let's do a collab with like Big Bob Gibson's or something.
Yeah.
Or better yet, this is a great NIL deal. Grant Nelson, if you're listening to this, come back. I will make this work for you. I'm about to pitch this. So Grant Nelson white barbecue sauce, Archibald's or Dreamland as an NIL sponsor. Put it on a t-shirt. You got Athletes Thread or J&J. You get Archibald's or Dreamland as a sponsor, and then you'll get X percentage. Come back. I'll make the shirt. I'll make the merch. I will do it. I'll do it. I need to post that Fire Festival meme. What would you do for Mark Sears and Grant Nelson to come back? Me.
I would sit.
You would what?
Shirtless. I would no, sorry. We'll have to bleep that out. That was an accident. I was gonna say I'll sit shirtless in a kiddie pool and have just a whole Gatorade thing of the sauce just poured on me. If that means that they would come back and get that NIL though.
Someone clip that. I'm putting that on Twitter. Joey Black.
I will 120% do that. If those NIL sponsors are lined up and those players come back, I will do that. No shame. I will commit to that.
Well,
now,
we're talking
as long as the sauce and stuff is provided, because I don't have that kind of money to go spend, $2,000 on barbecue sauce. But
can't hide money, Joey Blackwell over here. But
me.
But so we talked about the players a lot. Let's talk about Nate Oats. Obviously, news comes out, I think, last night, and then more is coming out today that John Calipari is going to Arkansas. First of all, I think it's a terrible hire for Arkansas. Sorry, I'm going to put gum in. It's a terrible hire for Arkansas.
It's a very professional podcast we're running here.
Dude, I don't.
You have me saying the S word, and now you're chewing.
Dude, my breath stinks. I gotta chew some gum.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Sam, you're finally letting Sam back in the house again. So.
Oh, Joey, you missed it. Sorry,
Ugh.
tangent. My ADHD brain's going crazy right now. Sam sat out in a hammock in the second half in the freezing cold out back of our house.
Gosh. Oh, I wish like I messaged y'all during the game. I said, "Could Sam come back inside?" Because we were only down by 4 when she left.
Yeah, I know. Maybe the curse was flipped when she went to the tournament. Maybe that was what we were missing.
That or we should have gotten her an ice cream cart.
Yeah,
disappointing.
We just need to make a list of everything that we did right this year. And we just need to treat Sam like a queen all year. Aside from kicking her to the curb every halftime, apparently. But
dude, she gets to go shopping. What do you mean kicking her to a curb? She gets to go do what she wants to do. But
we used to get her like an Ulta gift card. We need to get her like a spa gift card, and then just every game just be like,
but sorry, this is crazy. I don't know what's going on tonight, but so with Nate Oats, obviously Calipari leaving. I think news came out, and I think I can say this without people, because technically, like, I'm in the Trilly Donovan Discord, which if you're not in that Discord, join it. It's $6 a month, especially in the off season. If you want transfer news or coaching news, it's crucial, I think, because he's posting updates daily about different things. But he posted an update last night saying, because obviously the thought process is Kentucky's open. Nate Oats is probably the biggest up-and-coming coach in college basketball. Nate Oats to Kentucky. That's the thought process. Every national media person said it. It's the immediate thought for any Alabama fan with any big job coming open. It happened with Louisville, happened with Michigan, happened with Ohio State. These things tend to happen. And like we said, I think Charles, I think you said this. Now, I mean, we haven't even been recording for an hour, and I'm already forgetting things. If your coach isn't being talked about in a national media spotlight standpoint as far as another job, then your coach isn't doing his job. That means he's successful and he's wanted. And Nate Oats for the past 3 seasons has been that guy. Has been the guy that people are like, oh, he's going to Louisville. Oh, he's going to Michigan. Oh, he's going to Ohio State. Oh, he's going to Kentucky. Right? Well, March 13th, because now I have a screenshot, thanks to a Kentucky reporter, of Nate Oats' contract. March 13th, Nate Oats signed a contract worth, I don't even know how many millions, but it was $5 million annual, or what was it? $5 million annually, with increasing salary, $500,000 every single year through I think like 2029, right? But the important part on that is his buyout for the first 2 years of this contract are $18 million, which is the second highest in college basketball, right? So for Kentucky fans or people that are talking about the Kentucky job, which I think there hasn't been any leading candidates so far because technically the contract hasn't been finalized for Calipari to Arkansas. Nate Oats is the guy for them because he's 49 years old. He's made a Final Four. He's made to the tournament 7 of his 9 years as a college basketball head coach. He's brought Alabama from this perennial bubble team to a national power in 5 years. And because these screenshots have been posted, Alabama fans were worried all last night. Nate Oats is leaving. Nate Oats is leaving. Oh, no, we're going to have to go find a new coach. I got so many text messages. Who's the candidates when Nate Oats leaves to go to Kentucky? Found out today, Nate Oats told Kentucky, no, thank you. think about that. We just had a coach tell a blue blood, um, no, thank you. Would you guys thought of that would happen 5 years ago?
No. I mean,
No, I mean, it would never happen because obviously Kentucky would have been insane to hire an Alabama basketball coach.
yeah,
But
yeah,
no, but yeah, like even if it was this certain scenario, like no, that I could never picture that.
yeah. I think Joey, you said it perfectly. Like you would have never thought that Alabama would have had a coach so successful that he'd be desired by basically everybody at Kentucky. Um, I mean, when we did our Kentucky preview, I think I said like Kentucky's Kentucky. They are the team that it doesn't matter when their last SEC regular season championship was, tournament championship. Like they, I know UCLA's got all the championships with John Wooden and all that back in the 70s, but I think Kentucky basketball is Alabama football. Just the ability to sustain success with multiple coaches, the passion of the fan base. And you know, I don't think it's a situation that Oates is not cut out for that job. He's just got something going on in Tuscaloosa that's really, really good, and has the ability. We're not going to pass Kentucky as far as history and Final Fours and all that. That's not what I'm saying. But in the immediate future, maybe there's an opportunity to be a more high-profile program and a more successful program than Kentucky. And Kentucky could still go out and hire a very, very good basketball coach and be the Kentucky of old. But, you know, back to your question, like, yeah, I never would have thought that an Alabama coach for basketball would have turned down Kentucky for a head coaching job.
And I want to be clear, it's not confirmed that he turned it down. This is Trilly Donovan, which if you guys don't follow him, again, he's a really good follow. He's probably right 95% of the time. And I feel confident in saying that because it did get posted on Twitter. Normally, I wouldn't say anything regarding anything in that Discord publicly because it's one of the rules of the Discord is not to do that. But it was posted. I feel pretty confident in saying that Nate Oats is going to be the head coach at Alabama next year. Obviously, things could change. Kentucky could potentially throw like a $12 million annual salary at Nate Oats, and for all the money that Alabama has, like they don't have $12 million annually to pay a head coach for basketball. Let alone they don't even pay DeBoer that much money. But
yeah, just to say that'd be a $30 million investment in Nate Oats year one.
Yeah.
18 for the buyout, 12 for an annual compensation.
Yeah. And I don't think it would be that much. I don't think his contract would be that much, but that's a lot of money. We had Kevin Sweeney on earlier this season where he was talking about there's a difference between firing buyouts and leaving buyouts. Where firing buyouts, you generally have offset clauses. Basically, if you go to another job, like they offset the buyout. And then additionally, they have extension clauses where you can do a buyout over the course of 7-8 years sometimes. So like for Coach Cal, his buyout was $33 million. A lot of Kentucky fans have come and said, oh, well, we had $33 million ready to go for Cal to fire him earlier this season. You didn't have $33 million ready to go to fire Cal this season. Because Calipari had, clauses in his contract that would have allowed that buyout to be extended through 2029. And then on top of that, if Cal got fired, he would go find a job somewhere, probably making $5 million a year. And that money would be taken out of his buyout. Right. So it's different in that. And then with Nate Oats, that situation is you have to have $18 million within 30 days of hiring that guy. I think news came out about Kalen DeBoer. I think I saw it on like a message board or something. Alabama paid $12 million for DeBoer's buyout from Washington. And that's considered the largest payment, like buyout payment in college athletics history of $12 million. So that's football, $12 million. So $18 million for a coach in basketball. Nah, I don't, that's absurd,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But no, I think Oats is happy at Alabama. I think the big thing about what Oats has going for him at Alabama, it's two things. One, Alabama fans are going to be happy with making the Sweet Six or the Elite Eight every few years, right? That's a big thing. If you go to Kentucky, if you're not in the Final Four every single year, it's a failure. And additionally, Alabama has the resources it does because of football, but the expectations aren't the same because of football. So Alabama's making a ton of money. Their athletic department's probably one of the best athletic departments in the country. So Oats has it as resources that other universities, and I'm not saying Kentucky doesn't have the same. Kentucky has better resources for basketball than Alabama. I'm not saying that they don't, but there's less pressure both from the fan base and from an athletic department standpoint because people are just happy for this success. And at the same time, you have those same type of resources that you would get at anywhere else with no pressure. Why wouldn't you want that? And I do know his family's happy in Tuscaloosa, and he's happy in Tuscaloosa, and it's just nice to know that there have been multiple opportunities for Nate Oats to jump ship to different places, bigger places, better places, and he hasn't yet. So he obviously feels like they're building something there. As far as additional things that might happen in the offseason, I'll say this. Facility upgrades is what I would be expecting. Not arena. Unless someone won the lottery and is dropping a lot of money in the Alabama basketball arena. Not happening. I'm not saying it's not happening at all, just not right now. I will say this, the Kentucky opening plus the Final Four probably, advances the timeline faster than what it normally would. This is just me again speculating, 2 to 3 years. What I think, shovel in the dirt, 2 to 3 years. Craig said that there's been a lot of really good talks and a lot of really good fundraising happening over these past few months. And that was prior to making a Final Four. And that was prior to Kentucky opening. So I would expect facility upgrades. What that probably means, because people have been asking me, practice gym upgrade, weight room upgrade, office upgrade, the stuff that will help with recruiting that people don't see. And then NIL, I would expect NIL to increase as well. I got told today that, there's been some positive stuff today as far as NIL is concerned. So if we get more NIL, I mean, Nate's already gone to the Final Four with less NIL. Imagine what he can do more. So yeah, and that's where we're going to sit with all the, facility upgrades. I think it's going to be a big deal for as far as recruiting is concerned, and just putting the right pieces in place for the Alabama basketball program to be successful. But let's get your final thoughts on the season, how it played out, and maybe expectations, or not expectations, because I hate doing expectations, but hopefully a look into maybe next season, what you guys think it might look like.
Well, for me, I think this was a historic season. I know, if you had told me that it would have ended the way that it ended, like during the negative run that we had in December, I thought you were crazy. I mean, shoot, I would have thought you were crazy if you told me we did a month ago. This season was such a good season in that it wasn't like last year in that it was such a pristine, clean season almost the entire way through, and then it ended early. Instead, you had those ups and downs that really kept you engaged and kept you involved the entire year, because on a night-to-night basis, quite often you didn't really know what team was going to step out on that floor. But through that, we saw the team really come together and figure it out. And it's not just the team, but the coaches everybody worked their butts off to get this team to where it needed to be in March, and that's exactly what happened. When I think about this season in the future, I'm going to think about Grant Nelson. I'm going to think about Aaron Estrada. I'm going to think about Mark Sears. I'm going to think about, even Big and Little Mo. I'm going to think about all the Rylan Griffin. There's so many individuals on this team that contributed to the success that this team had this year. Nick Pringle, don't want to leave him out. And so, it ultimately didn't end how we wanted. That's what people will say. For me, it ended exactly how I could have, better than I could have ever dreamed, and I will always treasure this season as, if Oates sticks around and Oates is here, which, God, Lord willing, he will be. I think this will finally be, what will kind of hopefully set the pace for what we have going in these next, 3, 4, 5 years, decade. So I will always cherish the season. And I know all three of us got to go to multiple games and got to see a lot of it. And, it's great to have that front row seat. And this podcast has been a great ride, and looking forward to doing it for, hopefully years to come.
Yeah, I think how you just kind of wrap that up, Joey, this was it made a firmer foundation. When you think about the three cornerstones, the three pillars of what Coach Oates has tried to build with this program: max effort, continuous growth, selfless love. All three of those components were knocked out of the park by this team. And it's back-to-back years, I feel like, where you have a team that had continuous growth, selfless love. And there's 3 out of the past 4 years where I think all 3 of those were touched on. So now as you wrap up year 5 with Coach Oates, like I do feel that the foundation is firm. It's not that you're just going to have 1 year that was great, and then a year that was off, and then a year that was great. Like, finishing third in the SEC, especially this year in the SEC, like, this was a tough SEC conference. A&M didn't have the success that they thought they were going to have. Mississippi State probably didn't have the success that they thought they were going to have. So, Arkansas didn't have the success that they thought they were going to have. And you think about how we were coming into SEC play. So it's another building block in what we want the Alabama basketball program to be. Now, the expectations, as we've talked about, for me, is just continue to make the NCAA tournament. And I know that's tough. Even as we sit here and who we think could be coming back, we still don't know what the roster is. That's just how college basketball is these days. That's not just an Alabama issue. But I think even if we had gotten a 4 seed and had lost to Charleston or lost to Grand Canyon, I looked at this season as the program is not taking a step backwards. And now we're all sitting here fortunate enough that we do have a Final Four run in our belt, that it took a huge step forward. And if we don't make the Final Four next year, that's not like we're taking a step backwards. I do think it's still just continue to make the NCAA tournament and give yourself opportunities to make these runs in the future. They're not all going to be successful. That's just how the tournament is, and that's how March is. But I look back and I think of core memories that were made, watching these guys, talked about every player did something this year that I think they will be remembered for, not only by me, but just the Alabama fan base. So I continue to be excited about the future, continue to be excited about just, the guys that are coming in and just what's ahead for Alabama basketball in the years to come.
And I'd like to label this season, if I could label it in my head, it would be the rebuilding year that never happened. Because let's take it all the way back to our episodes. We all thought, and not just us, but the general Alabama fan base felt like this was going to be a rebuilding year. And if you can if you can be the number 1 overall seed in 1 year's tournament, even if you leave early, and then the next year you go to a Final Four in what's supposed to be a rebuilding year, you really can't be mad at all with the results from that. And that makes me just so much more excited for what we have coming.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I think I'll say this year's not been the year that people expected was the year that Alabama was going to make the Final Four, right? There's a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of frustration this season from fans and from players and coaching staff. Like, this was a difficult year for coaching. It was Nate Oats' best coaching job I think he's done. I think it took a full 100% buy-in from every single player on the team. But someone made a joke that in the other years around Alabama basketball, there's always been a player that has frustrated a lot of fans. Javon Quinterly, I think last year was a frustration. Alex Reese, the year that with the buzzer beater, UCLA, like he was a frustrating player that year. Nick Pringle I don't think was frustrating. I think Nick Pringle was, a very emotional guy, or is a very emotional guy. But there wasn't a player that everyone was just like, man, I hate that guy. Right. Or, oh, this guy sucks so bad. There was times throughout the season that different guys had their moments, but all in all, like, I think this team was loved by Alabama fans just because they kind of embodied this like blue collar, like never going to give up type of mentality that and sorry to use a football, ism, I guess. The football team this year did the same thing where, they lost to Texas, and the fan base, while there was a lot of disjointed and a lot of, negativity towards the players and stuff at the beginning of the season, fan base really rallied around the team. And I think it kind of made, for Alabama football fans, football enjoyable again. Not saying that Alabama football is not enjoyable, but when you're beating a team by 30 points, 40 points every single week, week in and week out, it gets kind of monotonous. And so I think that for this basketball team, it sparked a lot of passion for people like us and Charles specifically, who's 50 years old. That's been around Alabama basketball for 40 plus years, right?
He's 50. I'm 48. So
yeah.
let's be careful with the age here.
But for fans that have been around the program for such a long time and have such a passion for it, right? Like I think we all talked about it. Like I cried when we made the Elite Eight. I didn't when we made the Final Four, just because I had so much going on in my mind that like I just didn't have time for that. But like it for the people that have been around for a long time, that it got to experience bubble watch for Alabama and got to experience the end of the Avery Johnson era, but like Anthony Grant era, where you go 13 and 18 and things like that. It means a lot. But I think what's more important for this and for people that are listening, don't just be a fan when Alabama makes a Final Four. And what I mean by that is, we probably picked up a lot of Alabama basketball fans this season, right? And for people that are like us, that have experienced Alabama basketball for so many years and experienced the heartbreak, there's going to be fans that are going to come in and maybe not know the history, or maybe be a little bit more frustrated because they joined Alabama basketball fandom when we went on a Final Four run, right? But for those, yep.
Nate Oats just tweeted. He just said, Bama Nation, I'm fully committed to this team and to this university. We have already accomplished some great things here, and there is nothing I want more than for the University of Alabama to win its first national championship in men's basketball. Despite any rumors to the contrary, rest assured that I will continue that pursuit as your head coach. Roll Tide.
Breaking news on the Crimson Crossover podcast. Nate Oats is not moving.
Nate Oats to the Big Blue Media. Get the out of here.
I want to say this just for
sorry, I completely derailed everything you were doing, Christian, but that was I felt like I had to interrupt there.
No, because this is going to make a lot of sense. Please listen to this when I'm the Nate Oats portion of this podcast that you are going to hear. We were going to delete it because of the Jim Dunaway tweet that says Nate Oats has talked to Kentucky. So I was in a panic because I thought I had to delete the podcast because I thought Nate Oats was leaving. So actually, I didn't think he was leaving. I just thought that Kentucky was going to present a lot of problems. So thank you, Nate Oats, for breaking news.
Now to cover our butts also, the first 90% of this podcast was recorded before any of this. So it's not like that was twisting our what we were saying the entire time. Only the final probably last 6 minutes we've been careful. Just putting that out there so you don't think this entire podcast was recorded with us thinking that Nate Oats might be leaving.
I'm going to say this. I am now more frustrated that we lost on Saturday and that we're not playing in the national championship, because I would have less anxiety of us playing the national championship right now, which is probably going to tip off in 20 minutes, than the anxiety that I had 20 minutes ago as far as whether Nate Oats was going to be our coach or not. Even though I talked about earlier, like, I think the basketball program's in a good position. If Coach Oats leaves, like, we will go find somebody. But he's the guy we want running this program. So we can all, for right now, take a nice deep breath, hopefully.
Man, I'm just glad I don't have to throw away my hard hat. I was going to be really upset if I had to throw away my hard hat because, blue collar basketball, what school that worked better than the big blue nation of Kentucky? I was going to be really mad about that. Now my entire Twitter timeline is all big red blocks. And
okay,
I have zero problem with that.
You guys get to see real time the people that are listening to this. Like, when I tell you I was like stressed, and I know Joey was stressed and I know Charles was stressed because
my buddy just texted me. I just cried literally just cried with relief. So he just texted me.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Good thing Charles had to go pee, so we get this real time.
No, that's not supposed to be out there. You're going to have to edit that out.
I'm not editing that out. I'm not.
So guys, every time you see a cut in the podcast, that's when old man Charles has to go pee. Every time he's
I'm not editing that out. That's going in the podcast.
That's a joke. That's a joke. No, it's most of the time I mess up or something.
Actually, most of the time it's my microphone not working, if we're going to be completely honest.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
But no, you heard it here first. Nate Oats is staying at the University of Alabama.
You heard it here first on Tuesday at noon.
So with the news that Nate Oats is for those of you who don't know, I just said something and I had to cut it. So with the news for Nate Oats staying at Alabama, I can ask this now. What do you guys think about the plans or the Nate Oats as far as like off-season stuff or moving into next season? What are your thoughts on that as far as the facility upgrades, player, like just overall thoughts about what Nate Oats needs to do this offseason for Alabama and going into next season?
Let me gather my composure real quick. No, it kind of goes along with, what we were saying earlier, in that, obviously the portal has been a huge part of the game, really the past 5 years or so. But Oats has been one of the best, if not the best, at taking advantage of the portal year in and year out. So continuing the consistency there, finding guys. I know we also talked about, building up NIL. I think Oats, he already has played a large part in that, but I think it's as important as it already is, it's only going to grow more and more important. And I think Oats realizes that. And I think that from what a lot of us have heard, surrounding the program after this Final Four run, I think that that's going to be something that's going to improve this offseason. So I could see him developing a lot of time in that. And we've heard that there's potentially facility upgrades in the pipeline, stuff like that, stuff that this team really hasn't had in a decade, stuff that or more, stuff that they can really need. And I know everybody's going to sit here and clamor, we need an arena, and we do. I'm going to say that right now, we do need an arena. But first, you need to invest in the program, and by doing that, you invest in the players and you invest in the coaches. The arena is great. Everybody wants a new arena, but in order to develop those funds, you have to first build up the program. The program has already been built up a lot under Oats, but you need that continual investment and that continual success in order to fund such an endeavor as an arena. The arena is more for fans. And fans are obviously very important because you need fans to come to games. But the arena is more fan-centric. But if you invest in the player facilities, if you upgrade the locker room, if you do all those things, that's what's going to bring a new arena. Not, you're by building an arena now, you're putting the cart before the horse, basically. And so I think by improving NIL, hitting the portal, hard like we always have, and then continuing to find ways to invest in the program and to develop the players that we have. I think those are the main keys, but that's been the keys for Oates every offseason, and he's done a tremendous job, and I don't expect any less of him this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you got to at least go get one new assistant, and hopefully it's somebody on the defensive side. As it relates to recruiting, and I know we probably touched on a lot of this, but you need to find a big that can be a rim protector. God, I'm can't believe I'm speechless right now as far as just like what we need for next year. I think I'm just glad that there is a next year right now with Coach Oates, right? After the past few minutes. Yeah.
There's life again.
There's
meaning.
Yes. No, I just can continue to support the program, donate to Yay Alabama. And I think again, like talking about expectations and stuff like that, there's going to be a lot of names that probably get linked to Alabama as it relates to transfer portal players and stuff like that. If there's certain guys we don't get, there's a reason why we didn't get them. And I would say for a lot of times it's the right reason we didn't get them. So I think just being patient and making sure that we get the right guys that can continue with the culture that has now been built. I mean, I think that's what happened 2 years ago with the team that ended up being number one in the country and number one overall seed. Is the staff was very, very selective on what transfers they wanted to bring in to the program because they did not want to have culture issues like they had the previous year. So I would who knows what the timeline really will be as far as getting a full roster of players. But I think it's just be patient. You may not always see Alabama's name out there as contacting everybody like Eric Musselman likes to do when he was at Arkansas and probably now at USC. But man, feels a lot better being an Alabama basketball fan than it was 30 minutes ago.
It was like 10 minutes ago, if we're going to be completely honest.
I'm just posting every meme ever in our group chat, so don't mind me. I'm on cloud 9 right now.
No, I don't have to cut the thing about it. Oh, okay.
Another Greg Byrne just tweeted. He retweeted Oates and said, "We're committed to supporting Nate Oats as he continues to lead Alabama men's basketball in its pursuit of a national championship and encourage our fans to be a part of that by supporting Alabama. I know I've said this before, but want to reiterate how important this is with the changing landscape in college athletics. Nate and I talk regularly about the priorities of the program, and NIL is at the forefront, as is a day-to-day development space for our team, which we are taking steps to address as we speak. We appreciate your support through Alabama and look forward to celebrating more championships in the years to come. Roll Tide." So that makes it abundantly clear that Kentucky probably might have reached out to Nate, and Nate probably came to him and was like, "Hey, this is something we need to work on." And that is knowing this program. Oates and Byrne probably had a discussion about NIL today as a result of all this stuff going on. And that is obviously a prepared statement, but something that they timed this together on purpose.
Look, and I'll just say this, and Jim Dunaway is a great guy. He has a lot of sources in Alabama. I can almost guarantee you Dunaway was told that about the whole contact reaching out, because then immediately, and those graphics don't take 2 or 3 minutes to prepare. Like they have to type it all out and all of this. I guarantee you that was put out there intentionally so that they could then release the statements that they released about staying at Alabama and then increasing NIL. And I'll tell you this, and I said this when Nick Saban retired. The landscape of NIL for Alabama, for football and basketball, but football at the time when I said this about Nick Saban has not been good. They are taking steps on the football end to improve that, and it's going to get completed. Basketball still has a little bit of ways to go. So we talk about donating to Yale, Alabama. Look, I know people don't believe in NIL, and I know people don't like it because the common person, the 9-to-5 job people, have to, at least as the way NIL is constructed in its core right now, the common people, 9-to-5 people, are the people that have to fund NIL. And I know people don't agree with that. I don't agree with it. But if you're a fan of the university, and if you're a fan of the Final Four run, if you're a fan of getting all the recruits that we got, we have a top 5 class coming in this year. You know, you want to get the big time transfers. You want to continue and sustain the success that Alabama basketball has had over these past 5 years. You have to donate. You have to. And if you don't have the funds to do it, then that's fine. I'm not asking people that can't do it to do it. But if you have a little bit of extra cash, you know, I think it's like $18 a month is the lower amount, the lowest amount that you can do. That's like a couple Starbucks drinks. That's like not going to, I don't know, some fast food restaurant and getting food for a month. Like not doing that once, right? A month, like.
And I'll say this too, even if you don't want to make a monthly commitment, you know, there's a lot of great, you know, like clothing options you can purchase on there that 100% of those proceeds do go to support the team. I know J&J is one of our sponsors, and absolutely go shop J&J. Their stuff is great. But if you're, you know, afraid of making a monthly commitment, there's so much great stuff on their site too that 100% of that money goes directly towards their NIL, and every little bit helps.
And I know this is sponsored by J&J, but Athletes Thread, which I work with, also is doing that, maybe to a greater extent than J&J. J&J has been doing fantastic stuff, and we have some stuff coming down the pipeline as far as NIL is concerned. But today, right now, like, go purchase a shirt, go purchase a retro jersey. Like, that's something that you can wear. If you go purchase a Mark Sears jersey, retro jersey, he gets 30% of that. The jerseys are 130 bucks. Mark Sears gets $34 for every single jersey that you buy from him or for him off of Athletes Thread, just so that people understand the math. Like that's the kind of impact. If you get 100 people to buy, you know, those shirts or those jerseys, 100 people to buy Mark Sears jerseys, that's $3,000 that Mark Sears just got. It might not be a lot, but if a lot of people do it and you buy a lot of stuff, you get something out of it. You get enjoyment because you get an elite player back, or an elite player on the team, and then Alabama gets to get to new heights. Now, until new legislation comes out about NIL, that's where we're at right now, right? So support NIL. It's critical for Alabama basketball because there's only so much that, oh, I can increase your draft stock to that will improve, you know, that will make people take discounts. We'll call it the Nate Oats discount because we called it the Nick Saban discount. So
I wanted to ask y'all a quick question about the tweets that Oats and Byrne just released. Did you say it was only a matter of time before those got released?
I was hoping so. Man,
Yeah, I think they've probably been working on those tweets since probably around 2 o'clock today. And they might have been waiting to post them tomorrow. And then with the stuff that's come out the past hour or so, they thought, you know what, this is already done. Let's go ahead, and we don't need this to go another 12 hours in the news cycle. Let's get ahead of this thing. Look, especially if Oates, maybe his last, you know, discussion with, maybe he did have a second discussion with Kentucky and he did say no. And so if you let that sit in the news cycle that, oh, Oates hasn't said no for 12 hours, that just makes both institutions not look very great. So they did that probably to save their own selves, but also to, out of respect for Kentucky too, to not make them look like they're inept in the situation. But
look, and Kyle Tucker just tweeted this, and so I'll share this on the pod before we wrap up here. He said, I'm told that Nate Oats had serious interest in the Kentucky job, but had a good thing going in Tuscaloosa, and the Bama booster stepped up in a big way to make sure he didn't need to look elsewhere. I will co-sign on the Kyle Tucker tweet. There was interest there. How could there not be interest there? It's Kentucky, right? Like,
yeah.
But
they are who we thought they were.
It's Kentucky. I think Jim Dunaway basically said the same sentiment where they reached out. It's Kentucky, but when you have a good thing going, there's no reason to look for another opportunity, especially at a program like Alabama that isn't Kentucky, doesn't have the basketball money of Kentucky, but can do enough, one, to compensate you that for what you're worth, for maybe not what you're worth, because I think Nate's worth more than $5 million that he's getting paid right now. Or his annual compensation of $6.2 million. I think he's worth more than that. But at the same time, Nick Saban was worth more than what he was getting paid at Alabama. But a university can only do so much. But when you have that type of money, and you're in a situation where it's good for you and good for what you're trying to accomplish at a university that'll step up and do what it needs to do to make sure that you're continuing the success. There's no reason to leave, and I think Nate understands that. So happy to have him as our coach. I'm glad you got our breaking news, which was we got the breaking news on our end while we were recording, but you guys already know this because it happened last night for you.
I can't wait to go back and watch that live reaction of you in the middle of having a speech, and I was like,
yeah, I thought you were gonna have to take a pee break. I was like, geez, again?
Oh goodness.
What
an episode. What a way to wrap up this season, guys.
Dude,
can we not do that? Can we not do that every year? I don't know.
Yeah, please. I don't know about all that. But with that, I think we're good. I don't want to talk in circles, but you guys got a raw reaction of us finding out some breaking news. So that's a first for you guys. So with that, as far as I forgot to mention. Our schedule this off season, I'm not entirely sure. It's not going to be we're not going to be uploading every week. I'll tell you that right now. There's no reason to and I love everyone that's listening and all of that, but there's no reason for us to get on here every week. And the news cycle for basketball is not like football where you have stuff coming out, off season with visitors and, all of this. It's very slow. So we're going to have periodic, maybe interviews, or maybe we do like a once a month kind of update on what's going on around the program type of podcasts. But they're not going to be every week. And then as we get closer to the season, obviously we'll pick back up the podcasts and things like that. We'll probably end up doing more like emergency spaces if big things happen, rather than sitting down and recording a podcast, just because those are a little bit more convenient for a lot of people.
If we weren't recording this podcast right now, we'd probably be having one right this second.
Yeah, probably.
Christian, do you want to plug while I know basketball is going away, do you want to plug our 2 podcasts we have in the pipeline coming down?
Yeah. So you guys are listening to this on Tuesday. So tomorrow we have our first, this is why I'm not wearing J&J stuff, because I just didn't have time to change when I was working. By the way, they're wearing J&J stuff. I'm the bad host that's not wearing J&J stuff. So sorry, Michael, for not wearing J&J products on the 2 podcasts, I guess, that are coming out this week. Dear Lord. Sorry. But we have our Mulligans and Milkshakes podcast, which what's our handle again, Charles? I always forget.
@mole_milk_golf.
It's the logo is Charles has it on his wall there. That's coming out on Wednesday. It's myself, Charles, and Matthew Travis, and we're previewing the Masters, talking about Alabama golf. That's going to be a not necessarily Alabama specific podcast. It's just going to be a golf podcast with a little hint of Alabama, mostly focusing on Alabama golfers, former Alabama golfers, different things like that. So that's coming out Wednesday. We're going to do those weekly in the off season. So if you're a big golf fan, or you like the content that we're doing, that's what's coming up. And then we're working on a baseball podcast called The Weekly Joe, is the name of the podcast. And that's going to be with Roger Patrick Myers, Paul Graham, and Griffin Smith, who they already do the baseball spaces once a week. And we wanted to bring them on because I think that they're a really valuable piece as far as, understanding baseball, and understanding like the roster, similar to how we are with basketball. I think that they're our counterpart as far as baseball is concerned. And so I wanted them to come on and do a podcast so that you guys get all of your Alabama baseball content, from Crimson Crossover. So, what we're trying to do here is we started off as a basketball type of, only thing. People have asked if our name's going to change. It's not. This is still going to be the Crimson Crossover podcast, just because I think branding is important and keeping brand recognition is important. But this is only the Crimson Crossover podcast is only going to focus on basketball. But then we're going to kind of do like a podcast network of sorts where our hope is, to provide fan coverage for fans. I think our slogan's for fans by fans, of different Alabama athletics. So I'm trying to get a softball podcast going, a women's soccer podcast going, women's basketball. We talk about it on here. So we'll try to be a little bit more inclusive next year, maybe about a little bit more results for as far as women's basketball are concerned. But gymnastics, the obviously baseball we have going on, golf we're going to be talking about, different things like that. So, if you want, please like give me feedback. I don't particularly want to do a football podcast. I will if people want, not me personally, but I'll get someone to come do a football podcast if people want to listen to it. I just think for value add sake, right? There's 100 plus Alabama football podcasts that you can go get information on and things like that. But I don't know. It's up to you guys. Just let us know in either the comments or on the tweets and things like that. Charles, do you have any thoughts?
No, we definitely want to cover, as many sports as we can at Alabama, and want to be able to share that information with people that are going to value it and support all those programs. I think we've also got some things in the pipeline that might be some podcasts that cover all the sports in a unique way. There's still some things we're kind of ironing out there. We've got some ideas that we want to make sure are going to be something that, you, the listener, would be interested in. But I just, I'm very appreciative to have been brought on to this team to talk about basketball, and just, kind of continue to talk about just Alabama athletics, because as we know, it's not just a football school. It's not just a basketball school. It's a championship school, and all those champions deserve to have their spotlight as well. So I think we're all excited about being able to showcase, those other programs that continue to represent, the university in a first-class way, and continue to make us proud year in and year out with their success, both on the field and off the field.
Yep, absolutely. Joey, any final words for the season? That's it.
No, I think I already said my piece.
Okay.
It's great season, guys. Thank y'all so much for having me. I know I really appreciate y'all having me on, and looking forward to, as I hate to use a Saban quote, but this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And at least for me on here. So I know y'all been doing it for a while, but looking forward to. I'm already so excited for, we've seen so much these past few years, and
the past few hours.
Yeah. If we've seen that much in the past few hours, just imagine when we have a whole another season in a few months here. So.
Yep. So you guys be on the lookout for that stuff. We'll update you as we get it. We'll have off-season interviews, different things like that. So just be on the lookout. And we will talk again soon, guys. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.